Many people have been impacted by the coronavirus. The latest Momentum Household Wellness Insights report reveals South Africans are cashing in their savings and investments in order to cope with the effects of the pandemic. The pressure of reduced income and rising living expenses is causing many people to make hasty financial decisions that could have worrying long-term effects. Momentum's Head of Technical Marketing and Behavioural Finance, Paul Nixon, joins me to expand on this. Very good morning to you, Paul. Tell us what you're seeing at the moment.
Good morning, Jane, and thanks for having me. Yes, I think, in response to the global pandemic that was COVID, unfortunately, investors responded quite poorly, and we saw about 100 million rand lost in savings value last year from from investors making decisions. And unfortunately, our DNA kind of predisposes us to make poor decisions simply for two reasons. So when faced with stress, we tend to try and take control, so we like to do something, which predisposes us to making or trying to intervene in our portfolio value if we perceive this global pandemic as a threat to our security. And the second is, it's very natural for human beings to look to each other when there's a stress response. So, what are other people doing? What is the tribe doing? And these two things in terms of our financial behavior really played out and caused a little bit of havoc.
Okay, havoc how? People dipping into their savings, making hasty decisions?
Exactly, Jane. Yes, so I think we can divide this up, or investors up into two groups. There were investors whose goals and financial circumstances changed. So the global pandemic resulted in job losses, for example. So people were sometimes forced to dip into their savings. The other group of people, obviously, their goals hadn't changed. They were just stressing, and then kind of the response to try and take control was they were trying to move their money to safe assets. But in both cases, there's a lesson there, that even if your goals and circumstances have changed, it really reinforces how important having an emergency fund is, for example, so that we don't have to dip into savings that are linked to the markets. So it highlights the importance of an emergency fund. And then obviously the second group of people, it highlights the importance of having a good, strong financial coach that can really lay your fears to rest and help you to make or stop making bad
decisions. Okay, if you're lucky enough to have money to put away, how should you balance out the emergency fund? What should you be looking at? What sort of percentage?
Yeah, so there's a 50-30-20 general rule, and rules of thumb are good for human beings. It kind of gives just a general guideline, and that 50-30-20 rule pretty much says that you shouldn't be spending more than 50% of your after-tax income on your contractual spend. So that's stuff that you have to do, like a bond and a car. Cell phone contracts, that kind of stuff. 30% of that should be discretionary spend, so that's going out, eating out, and all that kind of stuff. And the last is 20% on savings. So you shouldn't be spending less than 20% of your after-tax income on savings. And those savings should be split up definitely into different buckets. Part of that is obviously an emergency fund to make sure that when markets do wobble, for example, and you receive a financial shock like losing your job, for example, you have 3 months worth of salary at least. And by the way, we saw that in COVID, right? So if you had an emergency fund that would have seen you through for 3 months, markets had recovered virtually completely within 3 months, which means that you wouldn't have had to dip into your savings and you wouldn't have realized, what we call a behavior tax.
And I mean, I know many people are worried about the sort of advice that they get. I mean, I've received really bad advice at some stage. I mean, you can fall into the wrong hands. So what is it that you should look out for so that you don't get caught?
Yeah. So look, I think, if you're shopping around, for lack of a better word, for a medical professional like a doctor, or a lawyer or a financial advisor, make sure that you're picking the right person, basically. So you should be focused on a financial advisor who's got a very strong value proposition that understands, the psychological effects of making poor decisions. So a financial coach, basically, and the value proposition in the financial advice industry is very much shifting, from managing people, from managing money to managing people. So, your financial advisor shouldn't be worried about timing markets or trying to get you these wonderful investment returns. Those are for the investment professionals and asset managers. Your financial advisor should definitely make sure that you're sticking to the plan, and that if your investment goals aren't changing, your plan to reaching those goals shouldn't be changing either. And you've got a strong coach there, basically, to keep you honest.
Good information. Paul Nixon, thank you.